Catholic homeschoolers, as we celebrate this joyful season, you're working hard with great love, engaging your children's hearts in the true stories of their faith. Today's guest, Catholic actor and radio producer Peter Atkinson, is here to invite you to relax and gather round the radio with your family for a very merry radio show.
Welcome to Homeschooling Saints, the podcast that helps you create the homeschool you love for the people you love. Our host is Lisa Mladinich, a Catholic life coach, TV host, best-selling author, and an instructor at Homeschool Connections.
Before we get started, remember to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, click the bell to join our channel. Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Mladinich, your host, and I am delighted to welcome Peter Atkinson back to the show to talk about a very merry radio show. Peter Atkinson is an entrepreneur, actor, and Canadian immigrant. He was born in Canada, grew up outside Washington, D.C., and studied classics at Ave Maria University. He received Ave Maria University's most prestigious award, the President's Award, and graduated summa cum laude. Working with high school students, Peter founded a study abroad program in Rome and a Shakespearean acting program in Florida. After training in Massachusetts and London, Peter went on to Columbia University's graduate school, earning his Master's in Fine Arts in acting. While in graduate school, he starred off-Broadway, founded the Merry Beggars, an entertainment production company, and met his beloved wife, Naomi. In 2021, the Merry Beggars was acquired by Relevant Radio, and Peter moved to Chicago to develop original entertainment programming for the national network. Peter has walked across America by foot for the pro-life movement, taught rock climbing in Switzerland, been published in First Things, and has two beautiful children. You can find him at themerrybeggars.com and thesaintspodcast.com, and we'll have those links for you in the show notes. Peter, it is great to see you again.
It is great to see you as well, Lisa.
Yeah, thanks. I just think this is so cool because we have so much talk with, as parents about screens and all the things that distract our kids, but we do more with read alouds and engaging their imaginations and being out in nature and kind of breaking away from the model that has kind of taken hold of society. Talk a little bit about the importance of this kind of radio style programming for us.
Yeah, it's interesting because the problem has come home in a very real way. Specifically, came home from the hospital twice over with my two children, and it's interesting. The first years, probably till around like ages 3, 4, like where their language processing isn't quite there yet. They're not able to totally get just audio entertainment. But from then on, from like 4 onwards, audio entertainment is such a powerful source of entertainment, such a powerful medium. And I was homeschooled, youngest of 6 kids, and we would watch some TVs, we watched some movies, but by and large, we read a ton. And I fell in love with old radio. I would listen to thousands upon thousands of these old radio shows, which pre-1960 was like the main form of entertainment for families. And you have families gather around their radio set, which would have been the size of a small cabinet at that point, and listen, right, to Gunsmoke, Johnny Dollar, etc. Wow. The great thing about what we have now is with podcasts, you can have that audio entertainment on demand. And what we've done with the Merry Beggars is we've brought the best tradition of radio theater with full cast audio dramas. So this year we'll have hired somewhere between 500 and 600 actors just this year alone, brought them into studio, and we'll have, by the end of this year, we'll have in total produced over 5,000 pages of scripts. And this is all because it's audio. So as a producer, what I love about audio is we can produce thousands of pages of stories, have hundreds of hours of content for a fraction of the cost that it would take to produce one film. And so now we can have this entire content library available totally for free to families throughout the world, which is just amazing. And in terms of screen, I mean, there have been so many studies over the past, ever since the advent of smartphones, where any exposure to screens, exposure to those devices can really affect a child's development. And so parents are sometimes left, up the creek trying to figure out, okay, how do I maintain some semblance of sanity, but not feel like a terrible parent by just like throwing Spot or a Little Bear or those are the ones my kids are into right now, or Blippi or something like that, just on the screen so my child is immobilized for a period of time. Well, the audio is awesome because it still activates your memory. It can start building. It's very similar to reading a book in that it engages the imagination. The child has to come up with the images that they're seeing and knit together the story, and similar to reading a book, but yet you can still hit play. Like the child can just sit and listen and enjoy it without being totally sucked in like you would a screen. So I love that we can produce this massive content library for parents. And, a screen is one thing, but I think even more important is the trust that parents have with the company that what we're going to be producing is going to support, not undermine, their work in creating a faith-filled home that's built on virtue, right? Screens, screens definitely, I think it's awesome that we can produce this entertainment that doesn't, get people sucked into the screen of death, the thing that just like turns their brain into a bowl of mashed potatoes. But even more than that, it's that kids will listen to our Joan of Arc series and will hear back immediately that they started running around in the backyard reenacting the entire story, right? To get those stories into children's imaginations and to form the moral furniture of their mind and their heart, which is going to stay with them the rest of their life. Like that's everything. Like that's the main goal of everything we're producing is how do we tell stories that are going to make mom's job easier in terms of raising up bold, courageous young men and women, but also to give the men and the women who are growing up, the boys and the girls, the models for what it means to live courageously and boldly and with adventure. And it's funny. So I know, I'll let you ask the second question by the end of the interview, but
no, I'm loving, I'm hanging on your every word. Keep going.
Well, it's funny because just saying that reminds me. So we've been producing stories for a couple of years now. And one thing that we talk a lot about internally is like, what is a Mary Baker's story? Because we're not going to produce everything, right? If you're a production company, you're going to have a certain style. CBS TV shows have a different style than HBO, have a different style than Fox, have a different style than Netflix, have a different style. Like each brand sort of has their own style. And I think where my heart has been drawn to, and a lot of our writers' hearts have been drawn to, is it's actually it's a phrase that Jordan Peterson uses, which is the spirit of adventure. Mm-hmm. It's that, can you tell stories where the need for courage, the need for boldness is evident, where the protagonists of the story are called to go on these grand adventures, which require massive amounts of suffering, which require them to work through self-doubt, which require them to sacrifice and put themselves on the line for what they believe in. And that spirit of adventure, to me, is I think that's the point of life. I think the point of life is that willingness to go into danger, is to go into suffering, is to go into uncertainty and doubt and fear, and fight for what is worth fighting for, fight for what is good, true, and beautiful. And so that's what I love about everything we've done. So our series, The Saints, the subtitle is Adventures of Faith and Courage, because we want to tell stories of saints where people are not thinking, oh, like, wow, that was a really holy person. What's for lunch? It's sort of not like an animated prayer card, but like, oh, Joan of Arc, when I heard Joan of Arc's story, I wept because there's something in my heart that so corresponds to a 14-year-old girl, leaving her parents and her mom and her dad in order to risk herself for where God is calling her. And it's just like that spirit of adventure is, it's to me, it's the most beautiful thing in the world. Not all of our stories hit it totally on the money, but that's what we're always aiming for. And I would say, now we've produced hundreds and hundreds of episodes, and we're just constantly hearing back from audience members that, like, the story of Elizabeth and Seton, the mom will have to pull over because she was crying so hard she can't drive with her kids in the back. Or Damien and Molokai, we had a caller call into Patrick Madrid, and he was calling just in tears because of how beautiful it was when David and Molokai, sacrificed his life for the lepers in Hawaii. And I think it really is that it's that spirit of adventure, which is so deep inside the hearts of everyone, whether you're an extrovert or introvert. Like, we just respond to that. And, adventure comes from adventuro or venturus, meaning to put out for something. I think of it as this probably is not the correct etymology. So I'm sure all the classics majors are hearing this. Like, hey, what is he about to say? But ventus ad meaning it's something coming. It's we get the word venture from it, right? When we venture on something, we place a bet on something. And the way I like to think of adventure is it's what you're willing to bet your life on. So to go on an adventure is to risk yourself, to risk who you are, what you hold valuable for the sake of something. And I think that's what all of us want. I think that's what parents experience when they have kids, is like they're betting everything on this child. They're sacrificing so much for their family. And our goal is, if we can produce content, if we can produce stories that make it a little bit easier for parents to be able to raise their family with that sense of hope and courage and adventure, then that'll be mission accomplished.
Oh my goodness, I love this so much. And of course, it's for men and women, girls and boys. No question, this journey of faith, this adventure does require that we overcome a great deal through faith, through surrender, through perseverance, all those things. And I've just got looking at my crucifix here hanging in my office and thinking that mystery of total self-donation that is, like, to me, when I'm listening to you call this out, tease this out for us, how important it is, I'm hearing the heart of the Father.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think it's absolutely right. And I think that's why, you look at a Marvel film and it will unintentionally, it can't help but go back to that Christian message of love, of self-sacrifice, right? Like, how did the whole Marvel film sequence end? I haven't watched those films because I got really bored by them, but it ended with, one of the main characters sacrificing his life for, to save the universe, to save the world. And that's not a Roman message. That's not a pagan message. That's not a Spartan message, right? They don't have stories of death they might have it for patria, for the fatherland, but they don't have laying down your life for the weak or for the poor or for your children, right? That's something that, we live in a Christian world, whether the culture likes it or not, we live in that world. And so all of our stories, I think, hint at that because we're so familiar with it. It corresponds to what our heart longs for.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And made in the image and likeness of God. This is where, in the adventure, in the daring, in the willingness to take the risk, is where we then enter into a flood of grace that carries us along as we move toward heaven, as we fight our way home. I love that. Yeah.
And so our series, The Saints, is our current series that we're doing. And people can find it at thesaintspodcast.com. That's where all of our episodes are. And one of the donors who helped fund us in the beginning, he said, the danger of bad Christian entertainment is that it tells the lie that God is boring or that being a Christian is boring.
Thank you.
And to be honest, a lot of people can live a very boring Christian life, right? So like you can be a really boring Christian, but that's not what God is calling us to. And what we're trying to do with this series and everything we produce, but specifically with the Saints, is we're trying to tell stories which, you know, my hope is that it opens people up to what is it that God is asking of them in that moment. And for some, it might be, you know, swallowing your pride and cleaning the toilets. For others, it might be launching a company or leaving your job or, you know, there's so many different things, right, in each person's life. But in our faith, all of those are adventures. In the faith, all of those are can be done with a spirit of greatness, right? Which is the classical virtue of magnanimity, where your heart is large. And our faith shows us that when you're answering emails or setting a dinner table or coming home after a long day's work to your kids, whatever it is, that can be done with a spirit of magnanimity, which expands the horizon of what you're doing from one of weariness and sort of feeling closed in by the circumstances in your life to one where you are doing this for God and God's presence can be brought into your daily life. And so,
and if I may, I want to just add a perspective as I am several years out from having homeschooled, but in the slog, you know, yes, there's beautiful days. There's lots to rejoice in the journey with our children, right? But it can be a real slog. And I want to say that what you were just describing is so important. The little moments of leaning into the presence of God, of saying yes, of holding back the harsh word, of doing the humbling thing, of just persevering. Those things make way for the greater, the bigger, more kind of bolder adventures to come. They strengthen us. This is a workout.
So we have Lisa Lacona, another great Lisa. She is our research director for the Saint series, and she has written over 1,000 articles on the Saints. She wrote all those Saint articles in the Magnificat series that people read. And in a meeting we had while developing one of the Saint stories, one thing she said, which was really wise, is the Saint, what we don't see in the Saint is the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of faithful private prayer that formed their heart so that they could respond to the moment of martyrdom, or they could respond to the child's death with faith.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And,
amen.
You know, I've recently had friends who had a tragedy in their life, and to see their faith, you know, to see their faith in that moment of grieving this family member who passed, that came from years and years of faithful prayer and going to mass and picking up your daily cross. So there's definitely a danger of thinking you have to wait until there's this grand obstacle. That's when you're going to be able to be a hero. But I think if we look at our own lives, we can see that the people who formed our hearts the most were the people who did it in the small daily actions. And, you know, just to bring this back to the Saints and the audio programs and everything we're doing, we didn't start out this way, but I realized as we produced more and more that the person I'm most passionate about helping are the moms, the mothers of families, because I think in a healthy culture, all elements of a culture would support the rearing of children. It would support raising virtuous children. It would, it would support the health and the help of the mother. And I think our culture does basically the opposite of that. Like it mostly does the opposite of that. There's a lot of good things going on, but most of our culture just doesn't make mothers in particular feel supported. And so just one thing that I've gotten more and more passionate about as we've been doing these works of these audio programs is we want to make it as easy as possible to help your children fall in love with the faith, because that shouldn't be up to you alone. And so, yeah, I just get really emotional about it because, one, my wife is an amazing mother, and just to see up close the daily struggle that almost never gets televised, the sleepless nights that we were talking about before we got on, and the even just something as simple as like modern suburbs are not built to foster natural relationships, right? Like you can go 20, 30 years and never meet your neighbor.
Yes,
and so to try and build something that can help alleviate that, make people feel a little less lonely in the faith, and give them a resource that they can trust it's something really beautiful about what we've done. And we have plans for more of that, of building out educational curriculum. And as much of that as we can, we're always going to make free. All of our shows, we've never charged a dime for, and we have no plan of ever charging for, because it's sort of funny because our main audience is like the last audience you would pick if you wanted to make a lot of money. It's like families with lots of kids and generally, like, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes one income earner. It's like, all right, that's last in the list of people that you want to make money on. Right. And so we just decided early on, that's our audience. That's who we primarily, we want to serve. And so we're just going to make everything for free and ask other people to help out, which has worked so far.
Yeah. I mean, you're picking the population that gets overlooked by most marketing organizations or whatever, but it's the greatest return on investment in every conceivable way. We are going to take a short break, but everybody stick with us. We're going to talk about some Advent and Christmas programming as well. We're talking with Peter Atkinson about a very merry radio show. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Walter Crawford.
And I'm Maureen Whitman.
We are the co-founders of homeschoolconnections.com and proud sponsors of the Homeschooling Saints podcast,
which is here to help you homeschool more joyfully, more easily, and more effectively.
We want to thank you for listening.
And we invite you to check out our courses at homeschoolconnections.com.
And now, back to our program.
All right, everybody, we are back with Peter Atkinson, and we're talking about a very merry radio show. So let's get to the merry. We've been talking about the rich, the courageous, the adventurous, just the power of this deep listening and the effect that it can have on our children for the good. Praise God. Step us into what you're doing seasonally.
So part of the history of the Merry Beggars is I founded it when I was at Columbia University in New York City, getting my MFA in acting. Previously, I had studied classics at Ave Maria University down in Florida, and we joined Relevant Radio in 2021. And so Relevant Radio is a national talk radio network reaching around 260 million people across the country, and their bread and butter is talk radio. And so we come in and say, hey, what about audio dramas? And they really liked that idea. The only issue was there weren't any studios that could record actors or record, our shows. And so we joined them in around June of 2021, and we were looking at what's our first production. Well, I had grown up with an Advent calendar of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. Ooh. And it was A Christmas Carol split into 25 little books that, every day, there were very small books. Every day you would take out one, you would read it, hang it on the tree, et cetera, et cetera. And it was great because me and my 5 siblings would usually fight over who could get the longest book, so there was the most text to read, so we could force our siblings to listen to each other. And it was just this beautiful tradition that our family grew up with. And so I thought, why don't we create an audio Advent calendar, which sort of surprised me that no one had really done that before. And so I took A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and I edited it into 25 episodes, about like 10 minutes each. And we we started getting auditions for all the different parts in it. And we took a conference room in the building and we hung up tons and tons of blankets. And we hired, I think, about 16, 17 actors, brought them in, recorded it over 3-4 days.
So you soundproofed is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So we it was funny though. It was on the second floor of the building and we're near Chicago. And so you could hear planes constantly crossing. So we'd be in the middle of like Jacob Marley and then hit pause because, you know, a 747 was going over the building. So besides that, it was pretty funny. We were all headphones on, just like, wait, has it passed? Has it passed? But other than that, it was a very smooth recording process. And we ended up with this, I think it's one of our best things we've ever done. It takes Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, turns it into an audio advent calendar, and we got amazing actors, incredible sound design, and now I think this is our 4th year releasing it, and it usually breaks records for a number of downloads that it gets per week, and families just have adopted it as a Christmas tradition. It's really, really, really fun. And our take on A Christmas Carol was, so much of the charm of A Christmas Carol is Charles Dickens' prose. And so often the adaptations fail because they just dramatize the whole thing and you lose the lyrical, Victorian, beautiful, mellifluous prose describing everything. And so what we thought was, well, Charles Dickens did public readings of A Christmas Carol. What if we, instead of just dramatizing A Christmas Carol as like a movie with no narrator, what if we took Charles Dickens' performance, 1843, of A Christmas Carol and dramatized that? And so episode 1, you, the audience member, travel with this beggar boy and the old man into the theater in London where Charles Dickens is about to do a public reading of A Christmas Carol.
Wow. And
he begins, and then you get transported into the world where you meet Scrooge. And that way you can still have all of Charles Dickens' prose, all of his framing, his characters, but then have the dramatized scenes, Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig, all of them in the story as well. And it's just... It worked perfectly. It was awesome.
Wow.
It was really, really, really fun. And I love listening to it every year. I'm super proud of it. And the audience seems to really, really like it too.
Yeah. And I just want to say to anyone listening, if you just happened across this episode in June or just after Christmas or something like that, obviously, well, if it's just after Christmas even, or just before Christmas even, the Christmas season technically goes till Candlemas, from what I understand. That's February 2nd.
That's right, yeah.
So you could still do this and be liturgically correct, but who cares? It's a great story.
Well, and too, we're going to be here next Christmas too. So people have really adopted this. We got photos from family members of different listeners who would show all of the kids gathering around the fireplace, listening to an episode every night. And then that's the other thing I love about the format that we use is it becomes what in radio is called appointment listening. Mm. And so you, as a listener, say like, okay, every morning, 7 a.m., I'm going to listen to the Saints episode, or every Advent, I'm going to listen every day, XYZ. And what I love about what we've done is our audience has really adopted it, not as individual appointment listening, but as family appointment listening.
Yeah.
And so we'll get stories and images of people at their dinner tables. My favorite, listening to the episodes, my favorite was when we were releasing On the Night Train, which is another series we did. There was apparently a husband, I think it was a husband who wouldn't let anyone at the table speak until after the episode was done. Or something like that. It was just like, that's awesome. Like that becomes a bonding. It becomes this like bonding experience that you remember for the rest of your life. You know, when you have the connection of beauty, storytelling, this imaginative world combined with the laughter and the smiles and the connection with other family members or friends, it's just, I know for my own life, I can probably remember a dozen memories throughout my life thus far where you have that real encounter with beauty in storytelling, and it's combined with family members or periods of your life, when the kids are young or whatnot. Those stay for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I remember once we had a really bad hurricane here on Long Island. Well, it hit a lot of the U.S. some years back, Hurricane Sandy, and we had no power. So we would go charge devices at the library, right? And at night, by candlelight, we were listening to an audio book of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really happy family memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was born in Canada, and my family used to take trips back up to Canada every summer in this white van that had no air conditioning. And my dad used to play the BBC Radio 4 production of The Lord of the Rings. Oh. And to this day, every single one of my siblings and I have this chanting of the orcs branded into our memory. And it's great. It's like this is just a shared memory that all of us have that becomes part of your family culture.
Absolutely.
It's really cool. And I spend a lot of my day working on spreadsheets or casting or marketing or all these different things. And then I'll check on what people are saying, and families are just allowing their family culture to be shaped around some of these stories. And that's the greatest privilege of a lifetime. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and the igniting of not only these deep, meaningful memories that are so guiding and so shaping of our just love for our families, but also just it stimulates our imagination, right? That visual imagination, and gets the kids running out in the backyard with their sticks to play Joan of Arc and wave their swords around. Yeah. I love that too, because that's a different kind of learning. It's a reenacting. It's like, a lot of educators will tell you if you can get the student to say back in their own words, and we do this with narration with Charlotte Mason training and stuff, that something happens in the brain that makes it more sticky. And so when the kids are inspired imaginatively, you're talking about something that has a lot more life to it.
And I think pretty much all entertainment breaks down into two buckets. One which sedates you, and the other which activates you. Yes. And just very obviously very simple. But if you read a book, and it's a classic book, it's a beautiful book, it's going to fill you with energy. It's going to fill you with love. The medievals had this principle of the good is diffusive of itself, that when you encounter something good, you want to share it. You want to give it away. You want, when you fall in love, you want to tell everyone that you fell in love. When you hear a new song, you want to tell everyone that, they need to listen to this new song. And then you have entertainment that just sedates you, right? Which is 90% of daytime TV. It's just sort of constant, there are podcasts I listen to where it's after I listen to that, it can be news or business or politics or whatever. After I listen to it, it's man, that was a waste of time. That was just that occupied an hour, and I now feel angrier or I feel frustrated, and there was no seeds that were lit. I'm not better for having listened to it. And when we hear back from our audience that the stories we're telling, or light a spark inside the listeners or start their imagination running, it's so fun. And then this hasn't happened with the Christmas Carol yet, but with the Saint series, teachers have already started using our scripts for school plays.
Oh, nice.
So that's the next, there's a whole slew of educational projects we're working on. But one of them is we have over 5,000 pages of scripts waiting to be adapted into school plays and into dramas for different age levels, so that every Christian school every classical school could have access to a library of top-notch scripts. And so that's been super fun. And A Christmas Carol is no exception, to get images back from families where they made it a nightly ritual, and Advent then becomes something that they can celebrate the entire season. Because it's easy, as our family, we try and do something special during Sunday to light the Advent wreath, to pray prayers, sing a hymn. Different people have different traditions. But to have something where you can just hit play at December 1 to 25, and that becomes how your family travels through Advent, is just, it's really cool. It's really, really fun.
That's amazing. Okay, I want to just mention again to everybody to please go to the saintspodcast.com. Is that where, that's kind of one-stop shopping? We'll find the Advent calendar episodes?
So, the saintspodcast.com will take you to our website, The Merry Beggars. And on the homepage there or under shows, you'll find A Christmas Carol. But you can also just simply sign up at adventwithscrooge.com. So nice. Adventwithscrooge.com. You can sign up there, and if you throw your email in that little form, we'll send you an email December 1 to 25 with a new episode every day.
Oh, wonderful. That's just beautiful. All right. So as we're just kind of coming to the last few minutes of the show, what else would you like to tell us about Peter as we're starting to wrap?
I honestly just gratitude for the listeners of the Saints and listeners of the Merry Beggars. We've gotten over 5 million downloads. We won 2 national media awards this year, and we had a one-day pledge drive on March 19th, St. Joseph's Feast Day, where we were able to raise, we raised over $500,000 in a day from like 3,000 plus donors. And, what we're doing is expensive because we're hiring like 600, 700 artists. And it takes a lot of time. Every Saints podcast takes around 11 months to produce. So we have a massive amount of projects going at any one time. But honestly, at the end of the day, I think I have just the best job in the world. The fact that I get to spend most of my day figuring out how to tell beautiful stories and bring it to an audience around the world is just such a privilege. It's such a privilege. So the only thing I want to say is thank you. I hope you listen to A Christmas Carol. I hope it brings joy and beauty to your family. And also, I want to say to the moms and the dads out there who are homeschooling or trying to raise your kids in the faith, like, be encouraged. You're not alone. There are incredibly hard days, but what you're doing, everyone talks about wanting to fix the culture, heal the culture, elect this guy, pass this law, write this book, start this company. None of it matters in comparison to the work of mothers and fathers. Zero. Absolutely none of it. Even A Christmas Carol, our production of A Christmas Carol comes from my dad and my mom giving us a family tradition that could fill our hearts and our imaginations and form us to the point where I now am able to pass that on to, hundreds of thousands of families through this work. So you never know what seeds, you're planting. And I know, it's so hard when you're in the middle of it to have any to have any sense of perspective sometimes when the kid is screaming in your arms or you're just wondering, am I a bad parent, XYZ, am I doing something wrong? Am I going to have to save up to pay for all their therapy bills later? Whatever it is. It's just trust that you are doing the right thing. It's amazing that you have people like Lisa and a community around you to support you. And the one thing that I've seen with young mothers in particular is find someone that you can share your struggle with. Find someone that you can verbalize and vocalize what you're going through as you're raising your kids, because you have people around you who are going and struggling through and with the same things. And I always just think of the book of Job, where Job goes through a really tough spot, we can say. And the answer is just God's presence. It's just God coming down to Job and being with him. And that's the answer to suffering. And it's on a human level, we have to give that to each other. And we have to have solidarity with each other. And all of the audio plays, all the radio plays that we're doing, and everything Relevant Radio does is really to have solidarity with Christians in their daily lives. One other resource I'll throw out there, which my family has started using, is the Family Rosary Across America, which is it's a 7 p.m. Central live stream that you can get on Relevant Radio's homepage.
Is that
and
a Father
you just
Peyton
go there.
thing?
Well, so it's Father Peyton no longer because he passed away, but now
Right.
Father Rocky.
Right.
And this show was actually started in partnership with Father Peyton's organization, Holy Cross Family Ministries.
Wonderful.
And the great thing about this is you can click on the live stream, click view live stream, and there'll be 30 minutes of Father Rocky praying the rosary. Kids will be calling in. There'll be beautiful images on the display. And it makes it that much easier to start praying the rosary with your family, to just start that tradition, start that practice. But the real takeaway is like, you're not alone in this. What you're doing is incredibly important, and ask for help, because you don't need to be, you have so many Christian men and women, brothers and sisters who want to walk with you in your journey of raising your children. And I know that it can be scary and vulnerable to go to someone else and say that you're struggling as a parent or an educator. But that bit of vulnerability is just, it can really be the seed that starts friendships, that builds community, and that allows other people to serve you as well. And I just get emotional because I've seen young moms struggle with it. And it doesn't have to be that way. You have brothers and sisters, you have people that want to help you in your journey. And, long term, I hope the Mary Beggars can play a role in that. I hope that what we do can help you in your work. And if there's any way that we can be of service in any other way, please just let us know.
Yeah, and I just want to say, and I know we could have a whole conversation just about this, Peter, and you've got a really busy day. Thank you so much for bringing your heart to this so vulnerably. But I want to just say one other thing, and that is that because you're living out the faith day to day with all its struggles and pains and endeavoring to surrender and trust it to the Lord, and many people on your staff and people that you contract out with to create these beautiful things, that living it out is what I believe invites the power of the Holy Spirit to then go out through this external, more public act of working on behalf of the Lord, right? So the stuff that we do privately, and we've touched on this, is part of where the fuel comes from to do the external things as well. And so I just want to say, I think that's part of the power of this, that the Holy Spirit has been invited into your life holistically in all the bumps and sorrows and joys.
Yeah, and I would just have one request for everyone listening is just say a prayer for me and say a prayer for everyone at the Mary Beggars and what we're doing, because anytime you try to do something good, you will face resistance, you will face attacks. Yes. And the attacks can come in lots of different ways, through temptations, frustrations, relationships, actual obstacles like technology not working or whatever. Yeah. We need your help. Obviously we need financial support to keep doing this, but we can have all the money in the world, but if we're not connected to Christ, then we'll just be, a clanging cymbal, right? So I would ask, sometimes as consumers, we can look at the culture and think like, why isn't there more good stuff out there? Why isn't, I'm a consumer. People should be serving products up to me, right? That's how the economy works. Mm-hmm. But we also need support. The people who are trying to change the culture, trying to produce beautiful things, need your prayers, need your encouragement, need your support, and then, God willing, we can continue, and we'll throw that encouragement right back at you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Peter. And I just want to say that when I was a homeschool mom, even before that, and I had no money of my own at that time in terms of I couldn't send money to Relevant Radio. I listened to Relevant Radio a lot. And so I offered household tasks up for Relevant Radio. And I ended up later on being on Relevant Radio and doing all sorts of interesting things I never expected to do. But we can just offer our daily tasks in love, do them with love, and offer those. Yeah, no, 100%. That's awesome. Yeah. All right. Oh my gosh, Peter, I could talk to you all day long. I'm sure everybody feels that way about you. God bless you. Everybody check out this incredible body of work, go to thesaintspodcast.com. That will link you up to everything else. Look for those shows. Enjoy them with your family. Sign up for the Advent releases of that show if it's the right time of year for you as you're hearing this. And thank you for being with us. We really appreciate you. We pray for you. Please pray for us too, and have a really sweet day in the Lord. God bless you. And that's our show for today. Our program is sponsored by homeschoolconnections.com. Be sure to subscribe to Homeschooling Saints and leave us an honest review. God bless you, and thank you for joining us.